Just a disclaimer, I did not say programming sucks. Think about what programming is. You can type words into a computer and it will do practically anything you want it to. That's the coolest thing ever. I think everybody should learn at least a little bit of programming. So, when I was entering college as a freshman, I too wanted to learn some programming. And this was my experience with college programming classes. So I walk into class and sit down. Immediately, I look around and 85% of the class is male, which to be fair, I was expecting. The teacher shows up and he's an old white dude, which again, I was expecting. Here's the kicker though, he's in a wheelchair. Now, there's nothing wrong with being in a wheelchair, unless the whiteboard hasn't been lowered to fit your needs as a teacher, which of course it hasn't. So this dude starts writing his name on the board, which he can only effectively use half of, in what I can only assume to be ancient Egyptian handwriting. Typical, right? He explains to us that we will be using Python. Now, there's people who hate Python and people who think it's the best thing since sliced bread. Just know that when I say Python, I'm talking about a programming language and not a snake. So already, I'm in this stereotypical class with a stereotypical teacher who has stereotypically bad handwriting, learning a somewhat controversial language. What could go wrong? I don't know how many of you have used Cengage in college before, but it's basically this nifty tool for colleges and students that lets you have access to your textbook, take tests, and in the case of my programming class, grades your programming assignments? This is where Cengage transitions from being a nifty tool to literally the devil. Like I said before, programming can be whatever you want it to be. It's expansive and complex and beautiful, but not to Cengage. If your program doesn't have blonde hair and blue eyes, then it's wrong and should be cast into... Let's take this example. Cengage says, here's a list of numbers. Write some code that squares each number, subtracts 7, multiplies it by 8, and then takes the natural log of the result. So you write some code, and hey, it works. So you ask Cengage if it will accept your offering, and it says... But the program works! So you go on a frenzied Googling spree, which results in obscure Stack Overflow pages, which are entirely too complicated for you to understand or entirely not helpful. So you go back to Cengage and ask yourself, I wonder what kind of output it's checking for. Wait, what? That worked? Okay. This is not how you should be learning to program. Aside from the torture that is Cengage, we as students are assigned projects to complete that are turned in and graded by the professor. The problem is, the projects are useless. Let me explain. The concepts they teach us in class are actually very useful and are quite literally the basics. Concepts such as functions, classes, variables, objects, arrays, data manipulation, and so forth. But then they give us the programming projects to apply what they've been teaching us, and it's like if you were in a Spanish class and they taught you about masculine and feminine nouns, and then the homework was to determine whether these words are masculine or feminine. How many of those words have you used in the past month? Besides door doesn't count. You see what I mean? These are not normal conversating words. It's a useless homework assignment. Likewise, and I'm not joking, this was my very last programming assignment of my first semester of programming. Former President Bill Clinton said in a speech once,
since 1961, for 52 years now, the Republicans have held the White House 28 years, the Democrats 24. In those 52 years, our private economy has produced 66 million private sector jobs. So what's the job score? Republicans 24 million, Democrats 42.
Your project is to convince the grader whether Clinton was right or wrong. What? I cannot even begin to tell you how frustrated I was when I first read this. First of all, this is the very last assignment of the semester. You couldn't have given us something at least a little more practical? I can easily Google this. Look, it's right there in PolitiFact. But why would I do that? I wouldn't, because second of all, I don't care about this information. This does not pertain to me at all. They're obviously trying to solidify our skills of data analysis, but I mean, come on. Look at an example of an actual programmer who analyzed some code and did something with it for his job. That's what I want out of a programming project, not this garbage. Sorry, I was very frustrated. But do you see what I mean? Useful concept, useless project. Now, I really only have two problems with the test that they assign. First of all, it's a test taken at home. Now, this wouldn't be a problem except it's monitored by this Chrome extension called Proctorio. What Proctorio does is it monitors you during the test. This includes capturing your screen, your laptop camera, your laptop microphone, and even your location while you take the test. I'm sure after this current pandemic is over, a lot of you will know what I'm talking about. It's just uncomfortable taking a test with a trained camera on your face at all time, watching your every move. I would much rather take a test in a testing center. My second problem with tests is question Questions like this: given the following code, what will its output be? I look at this question and think about the people who wrote it and think about how disconnected they seem to be from programming. Tom Scott, in explaining one of his programming projects, said, "First, we're going to add a bit of boilerplate code, just stock stuff to get it working. Did I know all that code off by heart? No, of course not. I googled load array from file in Node and I adapted some of the results. This is basically how everyone codes stuff like that. Don't ever be afraid that you're not a real programmer because you still look stuff up. The important part about programming is not remembering exact words or syntax. It is breaking down a problem, working out how to solve it, and then fixing all the inevitable bugs in your solution. It's about holding lots of complicated connections in your head, not the exact magic words that you need this one time. I still forget which order to put basic stuff in sometimes." So basically, the takeaway is, programming is not rote memorization. Now, at the end of the day, this is just my experience. Would I recommend taking a programming course at my unnamed college? No, absolutely not. I've wanted to rip my hair out more times than I can count. But that should not stop you from taking a programming course at your college. After all, not every college is my college. Now, if a college programming course isn't your cup of tea, then I would highly recommend just teaching yourself. Programming is cool! Some of the best and most successful programmers I know taught themselves. There's plenty of websites out there to get started. So yeah, thanks for coming to my TED Talk.